UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. The court-martial continues to serve the public with one twist after another, especially looking at the introduction of a new charge, a new accused person, but also the saying goes that lightning does not strike twice. But when you look at the similarities between Dr. Besigye and Obed Kamregeya's case and look further to Honorable Mike Kabaziguruka and 22 others, and look at Captain Amon Byargaba and 16 others, are there similarities between these cases? Can the General Court-Martial pass the litmus test of independence, impartiality, but most of all, competence? The $1 million question is, who is on trial? Is it the UPDF and the Court-Martial, the executive, or the parliament that passed the law? That's the discussion we're having tonight to test the veracity, especially of where this case is going and what impact it can have both on the public, the law, and the politics. Let me get to my panel. On my immediate left, Fiona Wall, Executive Director of Fidelis Leadership Institute. She's with us this evening. Good evening, Fiona, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy. It's good to be here.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Next to former President of the Uganda Law Society is Honorable Arnaitwe Rakajara, who is the Member of Parliament representing the workers, but also a member of the NRM. Good evening, sir, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, all viewers.
Next to him is Nicholas Opio, the founder of Chapter 4 and a human rights lawyer at that. Good evening, Nicholas, and it's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Timothy. I must protest because my former president is senior counsel, so give her full titles.
Yes.
But I'm glad to be here to share the platform with the distinguished lady and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for coming. Captain Francis Edward Babu, flight captain, veteran citizen. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. On this day when I saw Obama speaking to Trump, I got excited. I could see there was a little bit of change. Then somebody made a small cartoon and somebody was mentioning which one did what. Starting ISIS, abusing somebody. It was very interesting. So it's nice to see the American politics in its satire level. I enjoyed that.
We all
Death brings people together. Also divides people.
I see the show has started on a certain note, but we shall go with that. Lastly but not least, Chairman, General President of the Democratic, President General of the Democratic Party, the Honorable Minister in charge of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, the Honorable Norbert Mao. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, viewers.
Happy New Year, gentlemen. I already wished Fiona Happy New Year, and it's good to be here. Thank you for honoring our invite. And also congratulations to the 13,000 plus young graduates that have come onto the market there. And we appreciate that they've joined the job market. On a sad note, also in Los Angeles, about 13,000 households have gone under these flames, but also more than 24 people have lost their lives to these fires. We are praying with them, we're standing with them, especially the winds that are blowing these fires even further. But you can be part of the show. Join us on YouTube. Drop your comment there, or the number 0709 60 25 92. That's our WhatsApp number and our text number. Let us know what you think about the conversation we're having here. We're going to start this conversation on a low note, especially last week on Thursday, the passing of Honorable Muhammad Segirinya there, but also Honorable Margaret Babadiri, who passed on, the two of them there, and we'll be passing on our tributes here as a panel to the two of them. And I'll start with Fiona, your tribute to both fallen legislators, the former woman MP for Koboko, and also the former MP who passed away for Kawempe North. Your tribute to them, and I'll get to Honorable Naitwe.
Well, it's very unfortunate for the country to lose two eminent female leaders who had been serving their communities from the front line. I want to reach out to the families and express our condolences, but also to reach out to the people that they've been mentoring to make sure that they hold their legacy high, because these are two of the women that we've been watching. Yeah.
Thank you.
May their souls rest in eternal peace.
Honorable Enatri, you served with the late Honorable Segirinya, and I know you know about Honorable Margaret that also passed away. Your tribute to both honorables.
Yeah, my condolences to the families of the deceased, our colleagues that have died. I worked with Babadiri for 2 terms. She was such a good legislator, very good person. She was not seeing, but she was representing a constituency. She was not in interest group. And the time I served with her on the Committee of Gender, Labour and Social Development. She was such an interesting and encouraging woman who would really participate fully and legislate fully. We miss her. We'll miss her. She used to make a joke, would greet her, "How are you, Mama?" She said, "Oh, I'm seeing you." But she was not seeing her, but she would actually pick the voice and understand who you are. My condolences to the family of Segirinya. We worked together shortly. We did not interact so much, but he was such an interesting gentleman. The first time to see Segirinya was outside the parliament on the road carrying a TV. Police chasing him, and then shortly he joined us in parliament. But it's so unfortunate that he left us before we really interacted with him so much. But my condolences to both families.
Thank you very much.
Allow me to say something about Honorable Segirinya. Everybody was talking about his energy, and that is the thing that the country will miss the most. His energy, his zeal, his impatience with life. We almost feel like he was on a time limit, and I think that he has done his best for his constituency. I think as a country we have not done enough for his family. I think those are the things that are with me. Yeah.
Over to you, Nick.
Both individuals overcame personal circumstances to make their contribution to the development of this country. The Honorable Babadiri, as Honorable Kajara said, was blind. She never let her blindness get in her way. She could have gone for a special interest seat, but she went for a full constituency and served her constituency for 2 terms. The Honorable Segirinya really is an ordinary common man who rose from really the story of common poor individual rising to become an MP. I think both of them were inspirational to so many people in so many ways and have made their contribution to this country. I hope that this country can remember them for their contribution. I hope that the people that they inspired continue their legacy. The circumstances of their death notwithstanding, and of course their burial notwithstanding, the fact that they served this country has to be acknowledged. And I think for me, I choose to celebrate them and hope that many Ugandans will remember them fondly for the good things they did for this country. May their soul rest in peace. May their families find the strength to pick up and carry on and make sure that their legacies are never forgotten.
Thank you very much. Captain Francis Babu.
My condolences, may their soul rest in eternal peace. I met Babadiri many years ago. She taught me something. That we called them PWDs. It was the other way around. We, the ones who are normal, are the ones who are PWDs. Because they overcome their inefficiency and they become normal, which we are not. If you close your eyes for a few minutes here, you can even go dizzy. But imagine this is a person who walks around blind and still performs. So when government of Uganda brought people with disabilities in parliament, I learned something. That we are the ones who are disabled, because they are disabled and they try to be better than what they are. So we have to learn from them. So Baba Didi was exceptional. She was a lady of unbelievable. She could even tell. She even knew our names by heart. So it's something about Baba Didi that I did. Now, for my young friend, he used to come to the radio station, you know, and he liked to talk. He had something called the voice of Chebando. So they would run to come to the radio and say, can we? I said, please go ahead and talk. One thing you must learn from Segirinya is that the population you have that elects a man of that level. Is that our population in Kampala? Think about it. Nyerere told us many years back when he came here that during independence he only had 8 graduates in 1961. And when he went to form his government, his vice president was a man called Kawawa Rashid. Why? Because he had the foresight that this man could talk to the biggest part of the population and he will be able to unite Tanzania. Do we need people like Segirinya to unite this country? This is a question that we must answer. Therefore, my condolences go to the family and the people. But one thing they should not do, people should not dance on their graves. I am tired of people dancing on the graves of Segirinya for cheap popularity. This is a man who has done his bit. God has given him that life, and let us pay our condolences and our respect and let him rest in peace. But people are going there, they are dancing. One doctor told us that Segirinya had been in hospital for so long, it is when he died that everybody came on a motorbike to try and report at the hospital so that they could be seen. Others are going there to be seen. No. Let's respect the dead.
Thank you very much. Lastly, the Honorable Minister.
I was with the Honorable Baba Didi in Parliament. The presence of people like Honorable Baba Didi, first on affirmative as a representative of persons with disability. It was only later that he went and vied for woman MP. I think that's the best example we can have, that you build capacity on the affirmative action ticket, then you go and face the general election in a proper constituency. The Constitution requires that we review affirmative action periodically. I think it is time for us to do it. We should continue to support that because it gives you a seat at the table, gives you a voice, and if you are capable, that voice will be heard. Baba Didi's voice was heard, and she was able to achieve a lot of things. Segirinya, you would say really that he lived his life, in the words of Elton John, like a candle in the wind. That is for sure. His candle was burning from both ends. That is really the truth. And it's not a surprise that it burnt out so fast. It also, his life also shows that the media can make a leader. He was a creature of the media. He went and got mentorship from people who were making phone calls during talk shows, and he became prominent as one of the Abakubiba Masimu. In this city, we have people whose job is to, they are like jukeboxes. You put a coin in them, and they praise you in a phone call. So if Honorable Wakajara wants to be praised in every talk show, then you pay the phone callers, and then they say, I would like those who are in that studio to know about MPs that are doing a lot but are not talked about. For instance, Honorable Wakajara has done this and this and this. So he became very prominent, and that's how he became Mr. Update. And then he was a master of theatrics. One time he said the president's car is made of plywood. Then another time he said when they asked him whether he got fuel from the police. You remember there was a time when the police claimed they were giving fuel to members of the opposition. And then he said that is a total lie. Perhaps they are saying he gets fuel from the police because he runs very fast and they suspect that he drinks the petrol. Another time he said if the police want to face him, he's offering himself to have a boxing match. He claimed to be a champion of Kung Fu. So he said the police should put their guns down and he will give them a thorough beating. Then he came to protest digital migration with that hunchback TV. Another time he put food on a wheelbarrow and was rolling the wheelbarrow towards Mulago Hospital, claiming that the hospital is starving the patients, yet food is part of medication. So he really knew the dramatics. But more seriously, he was truly in touch with his constituency. He was in tune. You could say there are things he did like the Segi box, which encouraged saving, the health center that he built. He called it a hospital, of course. He spoke always in hyperboles. So he endeared himself to his population. But he was also a bundle of contradictions. First, he said Bobi Wine was not ready to lead Uganda, very emphatically. Then later he said the three people he loves most, number one, his mother, which really was demonstrated, and the mother also loved him really, really dearly. Then secondly, Bobi Wine, and thirdly, the Kabaka. So he kept on changing with the times. But you could say he pulled himself up by his bootstraps, and he became an inspiration to the ordinary people.
Okay.
He had serious challenges in court. That story is for another day. But he died an MP, because had things turned the other way, he would have been ejected. I join Captain Babu in saying it was a big shame what we saw in Masaka, the kind of two funeral events. And when his mother was praising the Honorable Matthias Mpuga, she was being booed. Now, we have to change the political culture in this country, really. And if Trump and Obama can be seen talking amiably, despite exchanging hot words, who has bewitched Ugandans?
The Vice President.
Okay, thank you very much. The court-martial on Monday had a sitting where...
I was about to say women are from another planet,
where a new charge
but Fiona is here, so I was going, I'm not going to say it.
Outnumbered.
Gentlemen. When new charge was slapped on Dr. Besigye and Obed Kamregeya there as charge of treachery, but also a new accused was brought in, Captain Dennis Ola, and that changed the trajectory of the case. But also with that there, the area of territorial jurisdiction was brought in, and a ruling was made yesterday where both Dr. and Haj Kamregeya refused to take plea, but court still ruled on that on not guilty, and that has put the court to come back on the 3rd of February there. And the trajectory seems to be interesting, especially with the new accused in this case, if you're looking at cases by Honorable Michael Kabazeguruka and also Captain Amon Biargaba. And I'll start with this note that was sent by you, Honorable Minister, something you posted, and you said the laws are not suggestions. The duty to comply with the law is mandatory upon all without exception. Secondly, bail or pre-trial release plus police bonds should serve justice, not to undermine it. Bail has been abused, but abuse of something is not an argument against its proper use. Honorable Minister, starting with you, when you look at this case, how does it reflect on the docket you hold, both on justice and constitutionalism?
We have a constitution, and the constitution is not an opinion of any person. It is the document which is binding on us. So what I wrote on social media was actually the obvious. Because we have a lot of people who think laws are suggestions which you can negotiate the way you want. And when I said that the abuse of something is not an argument against its proper use. Look at fire. We use it for cooking, for warming ourselves, but there are those who commit arson using fire. Would you now say, I hereby ban fire because it is being used by criminal-minded people to burn houses? It's our duty to go back to the Constitution. And incidentally, let's look at laws as rules and regulations. But also let's look at the legal environment in terms of standards. The Constitution of Uganda sets a very, very high standard. It says that there shall be no derogation from the Constitution except the ones that are acceptable and demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society. So the Ugandan Constitution is inviting the whole world to judge us. Because when you say in a free and democratic society, that is the standard. So the courts should not hesitate. It's actually their duty. Some people think it is the role of the Minister of Justice to declare to interpret laws. It's not my job. My job is to serve the executive branch. And we execute laws. And when we execute them wrongly, the courts do the job of referees and linesmen. So that when we cross the line, they say you have crossed the line. And the line in a football pitch is not negotiable. Fortunately now we even have VAR. So you could say the Supreme Court is really the VAR. It is up to them to tell us whether what is going on meets that very high standard that is in the Constitution. So I know for a fact that what you are talking about as a ruling, it can't be a ruling. When an accused person keeps quiet, the law says that a plea of not guilty is entered. And I think the court wasted a lot of time insisting on repeatedly. If somebody says, I reject your jurisdiction, I don't believe that I'm rightfully before this court is illegitimate, that is part and parcel of the right of an accused person to give their own judgment. The duty of the state to quickly go to the business of proving their case. Remember, part of a fair trial is speedy trial. By the time you drag somebody in handcuffs to the court, surely you must have the evidence locked in, and then you call witnesses and prove your case. Normally, after that, the accused person can say, I submit that there is no case to answer. Then the bench has to rule on that, whether there is a case to answer or not. So those antics are totally unnecessary. We expect the state to be very serious in prosecuting suspects, and our standard also is presumption of innocence. And if you are presumed to be innocent, then it is not necessary to project you as if you're already an accused person. In America, for instance, there's this guy who shot somebody in broad daylight. hundreds of lawyers queued in front of the court to defend him. For them, they think the man did a good job because this person was a hated figure. Not that they believe he didn't commit murder, but they probably will go and say, now there should be sentencing. Maybe the charge should be manslaughter and so on. They will bring all sorts of technical arguments. But the court has spent so much time discussing all sorts of things, starting with the drama of getting a mere piece of paper to have the right to appear, which is basically clerical work. That decision should have been made at the reception of the Law Council to say, sorry, we can't, because the Law Council has big people. The receptionist should have said, this thing is not notarized. We don't have copies of the recommender's practicing certificate. Please go back and put your papers in order, instead of forwarding incomplete files. So the whole drama is totally unnecessary. If indeed Colonel Besigye has committed an offense and the state has evidence, the trial should go on at top speed.
Honorable Minister, you have said the Supreme Court, in your own words, is the VAR. But there is a case of Honorable Mike Kabazeguruka that is not moving anywhere to give us headway on how this case should move, if you're talking about top speed.
That is where perhaps the politics come in. It is not necessary for us to talk as if judges come from another planet. Judges live in this country. And judges have their inclinations. So, judges have their world view on how they view the world. There are some judges who, if you go before them, you know you are going to jail for a very long time, or you are going to be sentenced to death. Because these judges are also human. Then there are judges who are more liberal. And that is why the public sometimes does not understand how people who have committed the same offense get different sentences. Because these judges are also human. It's important that the Supreme Court lays this matter to rest. It has been there for a very, very long time. The Court of Appeal made its ruling. And to overturn a judgment of the Court of Appeal, you need very sound reasoning. Secondly, academia should not also let us down. I'm disappointed, Timothy, that our professors and academics spend all their time writing in newspapers instead of writing rigorously argued scholarly articles that should attract the attention of the judiciary. That's the way it should be. But if you are just writing your own politically biased opinion pieces in newspapers, judges are not going to take you seriously. We need the Law Society actually should be launching a law journal where scholarly articles are written critiquing what the judges do. We can all contribute to the development of the law. And by the way, even if the Supreme Court makes a decision whether they say civilians should not be tried in the court-martial or civilians should be tried, at another stage, the Supreme Court can change its own decision. In America, long ago, the Supreme Court said the right of abortion is part of a woman's right to privacy. The famous Roe versus Wade. Recently, then they overturned it themselves. So I do not know why people are so nervous and anxious about these kind of things.
Thank you very much. Let me come to Captain Francis Babu. Captain, we were here and your really thumb-chesting was they should give this man bail.
Yes.
Because of age. But when you look at how this case has progressed from November to date, what are your thoughts about it?
Now, before I go that far, I think the lawyers have not done us any favor at all. First and foremost, they're here fighting over papers for one of their members to practice in Uganda. We had East African used to have one group, and a lawyer trained in Dar es Salaam could practice in the whole of East Africa. They went and started their unions, and they started breaking this. Uganda started protecting their part, Kenya is protecting their part, Tanzania is protecting their part. They should be one. The East African Law Society. It should not even be Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. It should be one. And they should practice in the whole of East Africa. That's number one. Number two, lawyers want to be politicians. They should choose. Either they are politicians or they are lawyers. This law society, this union of theirs, because they want a job everywhere, they want to be this, they want to be that, they want... No. We know it's a union. You give it a beautiful name, law society. How can a man be a mayor and go and practice law? First of all, the law society should tell us this. All other people who are in political jobs cannot practice their work, except the lawyers. Lawyers are, a mayor is using the address of city council to run as chambers. And the law society has kept quiet. I'm sorry, the lawyers must choose between politics and law. Lawyers, when you are making laws, they want every chairperson in this country to be a lawyer or equivalent to a judge. No. You must respect others also. I'm unhappy that somebody who is a mayor is practicing as a lawyer in a court of law. When others are not allowed, engineers are not allowed, doctors are not allowed, everybody is not allowed except the lawyers. How can you have your cake and eat it? This is wrong. And it is in the Constitution, by the way. You keep on quoting Constitution. But when you are in politics, you are not supposed to be in Parliament and at the same time you go and get money from another source. It's wrong. Oh, they are going to tell you, oh, but that's pro bono. Pro bono, No, don't deceive us. Choose. I completely say that lawyers who are in politics should stay in politics, and lawyers who are in chambers, they can go and do their work. You can't earn two salaries at the same time. That's another point I want to say. Secondly, let's admit this is not the only country in the world with a court, with a military court. Every nation has a military court. And it started in Britain, and its history is known.
For who?
No,
for civilians?
No. Wait, I'm coming there. I'll come to that one. Let's talk about military court. One thing at a time. That's a problem. You confuse these issues. The lawyers like to play that game. I'm not going to play that game. Every military in the world has got a military court. Then it is established by law. It is there. And in some countries, everybody in that thing is a lawyer. Army officers who are lawyers. Even the prosecutors are lawyers. Now, if we want to, we can argue and say that our military court, everybody who in it should actually have gone to a law school. I can argue that one. I have no problem with that. After we have said that, in the world today, methods of criminal activities have changed. Terrorism and bad people, including, by the way, the government which is in power now. It came in power by using guns, so they know the name of the game. So they say anybody with a gun is no longer a civilian to them. Now that is their policy. That's what they say. We start from there.
And just,
I'm coming.
Yes,
to that.
Captain. And I'm glad you went there. Jamil
I'm gonna come back.
No, Jamil, you've said weapons, anyone who handles a weapon.
I'll come to that. You are using that. Let's finish this argument. Then I'll come to Jamil Mukulu and all the others. And I'll also come to the court, the Uganda court, which has got a branch. Within that court on armed, people who are armed and all that. What is it called?
National Crime Division.
Yeah, it is there. I know about all that. Let me finish one thing at a time. The policy of your own government says that anybody who is armed, as far as they are concerned, should go to a military court. That is their policy. Second policy, they have a relationship with Kenya on armed groups. It is in the treaty. And they have got ways and what the intelligence works in the whole of East Africa. So that's another area we must also look at. Now let me go to your, I'm coming to your
Captain,
point.
because I want us to stay, because you're talking about an MOU that no one has ever seen.
Do you have the East African Treaty?
No. There is an MOU that has been referred to in that court numerous times, and no one has seen it.
May I read that treaty for you? Because it is there, it's written. They cooperate in security. They do. They do. You cannot argue against that. The intelligence of these countries work together. And people have been got from here and taken to Kenya. They've been got from Kenya to Tanzania and vice versa. Now, let me also go to the very high. You know, you people like America. You know, is everything in America is pure. What is Guantanamo Bay? What is it? What's Guantanamo Bay? What do they do there? You know why? Because they are smarter than us. Instead of bringing them in the country, they get some island and they create a court and take people there to do the same job. Guantanamo Bay. They pick them up from every country. Pick them from Iraq, pick them from wherever, take them to Guantanamo Bay. The reason I'm saying this is not to justify the argument you are trying to bring. And now I go to Mukuru. Mukuru was already in prison in Tanzania and in civilian courts already. He had to be brought back through the civilian courts. And when he came here, they could not take him to a military court because he had come through the civilian system. So that argument is there too. All I am trying to say is this. Your own president goes on media and says, we did this because of 1, 2, 3, 4. He gave his reasons. You don't agree with them, fine. But now you will argue. Does not make you not go there. And by the way, I agree with the lawyers who say, no, civilian people should not be tried in a military court. But to do that one, we need to do it nicely, with a little bit of class. Not to go there and use other methods by insulting the people in that court. Put it down as your argument. I have no problem with it, and I agree with it. By the way, I have a reason why I agree with it. But at the same time, don't add too many things on it. That's as all of us Ugandans say, we don't want civilian to be taken to a military court. And we give our reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
And be honest about it. What I don't agree with is to use it for you to get political capital out of it.
And we're going to come to the politics. But allow me bring in Nick. Councillor Nick, you have followed this case. I have seen you write a few things, both on social media, but also make commentaries on it. When you look at this charge, the new charge that has been put there, when you look at the new accused person, questions of jurisdiction, territorial there, and you look at Michael Kawazeguruka, you look at Captain Amon Biargaba, help us make sense of the legalities here that are being argued, because it seems like, that I'll ask later, but help us make sense of this.
My president will make perhaps better sense. She's senior counsel, and the minister is here. Perhaps he can guide us. But let me start by saying this, Timothy, that justice must not just be done, but must be seen to be done. I think that the display at the General Court Martial leaves you thinking whether the pursuit of that case is about justice or indeed about other things. Now the court is just a stage. Because right from the beginning, there were already questions about the legality of that process. Okay? The good captain talks about military cooperation between countries. The East African Treaty doesn't trump the Ugandan Constitution. There are legal processes for rendition, both under domestic legislation, but also under other international legal instruments. The rendition, let me use perhaps a softer word, the rendition of the two individuals before the General Court Martial raised questions about legal processes. okay? Because he mentioned about Mukulu. Mukulu wasn't in a civilian court in Tanzania. He had been arrested. And Uganda wanted him back. What they did was to follow the right procedure. Not to cite some MOU, but to follow the right procedure, to go before the High Court in Tanzania, file an application for rendition, and in that process comply with international law as well as domestic law. This is the second case of Thomas Koyelo. Koyelo was not in a detention somewhere. He was picked up at a battlefield, nearly, dead. We brought him back to the country, took him before the International Crimes Division of the High Court. One can argue that the nature of the crime that they alleged to have been committed by Thomas Koyelo and Mukulu were crimes of international nature. And therefore, the most appropriate court would have been the International Crimes Division of the High Court. Perhaps that is true. But the question of processes, if you don't get it right, you taint the entire trial. And I think there are questions about legality. The second thing is this, that you have a court process that appears to have been hurriedly put together. Okay? When the president says don't grant bond to people, what I read and what I saw in the newspapers today, the Chief Justice reading, was that before you arrest somebody, better have the evidence so that when you arrest them, you take them to court. You don't have to hold them for long. The question of a bond becomes relevant if the person is being held beyond the 48 hours. And if you have evidence, take them to court. What we see in the General Court Martial is that we are making the case as we go along. Hence the addition of a third individual in Captain Ola, who, by the way, I must point out, has been in jail for the last 2 years. Alleged to have committed a crime alongside these two individuals. One wonders how such a crime would have been committed by an individual who is already in prison. So we are making this along as we go. I think that the predominant thinking has been, there has been such a sustained argument about the trials of civilians in the military court. And I think that the calculation has been that they're just about to lose that argument. And the addition of Captain Ola is to make the case that there's a second limb under which a civilian can be tried before the military court, namely that the alleged crime was committed together with a service personnel. Okay? That, I think, is the only calculation for the introduction of this new offense and for a new accused person on the same charge sheet. Now, my argument has been that we need to reset, because this clumsiness appears to have been both on the side of the court, but also on the side of our colleagues who are defending their clients before that court. I think the primary objective, and I think my good friend Sam Moizi, who is the legal advisor for the Democratic Party, former advisor for the Democratic Party, said their case in that court is not a case of law, it's about politics. So you can see that the approach being taken by our learned friends in that court is a political posture. And the court is taking another posture. I think we need to reset if we care about the interest of justice in that court. Because what is happening in that court is just painting us as a very, autocratic society, disorganized. There's no decorum, there's no courtesy in that court. The last thing I would want to say is this, and my good friend and colleague Aaron Kiza already is in jail serving a 9-month sentence. You can tell that the incarceration of Aaron Kiza was not about perhaps his conduct only in that court. It was much more than his conduct. Many people have argued that Aaron Kiza, he used the word belittles or abuse, but I think he furiously challenged the judge advocate in that court. He challenged the chairperson of that military court. He challenged the prosecutors, perhaps in a more louder way than his other colleagues have done so. And I think that together with the baggage he comes with, the cases he's done in the past, may have just landed him in that hot soup. I think it is most unfair, because in a courtroom where lawyers and judges disagree, the normal thing to do was to say, let's go back to chambers and sort out this housekeeping rule. And normally when you do that, you save the court image from such display. In this case, the court appears to have fallen in that trap and acted in haste, and unfortunately sent our colleagues in jail. I hope and pray that the Martial Appeals Court can reverse that decision and ensure that Aaron Kiza is released and returns to do his case. Because see, the incarceration of Aaron Kiza has now added a second layer of legal challenge to the process before the General Court Martial. The accused persons are saying, that is the lawyer I want in my case. You don't have him. So you're creating another legal problem that is perhaps a sideshow. And the General Court Martial should not have gone down that route.
My last question to you, Counsel Nicholas, before I come to the Honorable. Who is at trial here?
Well, the simple answer is that the people who are on trial are the people who are charged in the charge sheet.
Because there's a UPDF Act being thrown. Yes.
I guess the question that you raise is that this process has shone a light on other issues, okay, that we as a country ought to have resolved so much long ago. The first, of course, is the question of the propriety of the General Court Martial, not just in trying civilians, but acting as a quasi-judicial body. Structurally, that court is not set up in a way that would fulfill the requirement for a proper judicial process. You have a court that can retire to ask for direction from this appointing authority. It's in their rules. You have a court whose membership have no legal training. You have a court whose members don't enjoy security of tenure. What gives a judge the power to make a decision is that they have a security of tenure. Nobody can remove them. It's difficult to remove a judge. But you have a panel who are appointed on an annual basis by its appointing authority. They have no security of tenure. So will that court have the independence to make decisions that sometimes might be against the interest of its appointing authority? We doubt. The second question, of course, is the issue of the trials of civilians in the General Court Martial. The Honorable Minister has said the Supreme Court should have provided guidance. The case before the Supreme Court has taken 5 years, and yet the Supreme Court has issued a temporary injunction staying the implementation of the decision of the Constitutional Court, which outlawed the trials of civilians in the General Court Martial. A system acting in good faith, okay, a system acting in good faith, this system including those who prosecute in the armed forces, should have taken judicial notice, not just in the Kabazuruka case, because there are 2 other decisions following that decision. One of them is Amon Bierogaba. The other is, I think, Lieutenant Ogwang, that outlawed the trial of civilians in military court. And those decisions have never been appealed or even stayed. So a system acting in good faith would have paused the trials of civilians in military court and waited for the guidance of the Supreme Court in regard to that matter. But what do we see? Civilians are being tried in that court making excuses, saying they hadn't been served with an order of stay of trial, and in that regard, therefore, they don't care, they will go ahead with the trial.
Thank you.
So in that regard, the court itself is under trial, but so is Parliament, because the question is, in enacting the UPDF Act in 2005, did Parliament have the authority to extend the jurisdiction of the military court to try other people who are not members of the UPDF? Because the Constitution says Parliament shall make laws to ensure military discipline in the military court, sorry, in the military, by enacting a court system. Parliament went ahead and did way over what the law requires them to do and granted that court jurisdiction, not just over civilians, but by the way, over extraterritorial crimes. So if you commit a crime of certain nature in Guantanamo, you could still be tried by General Freeman Mugabe. You still can. Okay? So the question of the legislation, and the Honorable Mao indicts academics for writing opinions in the papers, but if anybody cared to read the reports of the Human Rights Peace Center on military justice, there is numerous study written by Dr. Kawumba, written by Dr. Ronald Naruwero, who by the way has a PhD in military law. PhD in military law. They've done extensive research on the question of military justice. You'll be surprised to learn that part of the conclusion, and one of the studies I took part in and wrote for the UN Human Rights Office, is that even for military men, that court is not delivering justice.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nicholas. Let me come to the Honorable Wakajaya. When you look at this case, we already jostling, your opponents are already in the field, running up and down. What are the ramifications to the general elections come January of 2026?
Well, thank you so much. Before we go to how I see it, what will come out of these trials and all that, let me go back in 1996. This discussion has reminded me when Uganda was under attack of the terrorists. Those who remember can correctly remember that civilians turned dangerous to the society with weapons of mass destruction, with bombs, with SMGs, with all weapons of different types. And they started attacking bars, attacking discotheques. And I remember one day many people died in Nakurabi and different areas. Now, that I think changed the politics and justice in this country. When innocent people were under attack, attacked by civilians, fellow civilians, but well-trained militarily, well-trained in different tactics of mass destruction. And I remember those days, the operation was done. I hear even other countries had to participate because the attack was too much. And I hear that Uganda was supposed to be Islamized kind of change of the regions and all of that. So I think legislation then changed and the approach of how to deal with some civilians. If someone is trained in manufacturing bombs and using sophisticated weapons, so how do you deal with that person? To me, I think that person now changes from being civilian and become kind of a military personnel. Two, I don't know what went wrong with this country. As Brother Pio here was saying, now Francis Captain also talked about it, how lawyers behave. I think now everybody is, I think professionalism has been sacrificed and political correctness is the order of the day. Everybody wants to show, actually it's not even to take you as a good professional person, but how do you use your profession, your office, your everything to be politically recognized. And at the end of the day, we have seen them ending up seeking for political offices because of what they have been doing, abusing their profession to achieve different things. So when you see this circus in courts, I think even it is now almost in the hospitals, someone will start treating someone and even go on TV and see, this is how I treated this human being. So there we went, there is how we lost it. And we need now to rethink as Ugandans and respect our professionals. So, back to your question. Indeed, it is political correctness. People are using this case. People are using what is here now to gain political recognition. How I wish these discussions on how people in the court, and we discuss objectively and address these issues objectively and see who is wrong and who is right. So you'll find all political people with political interests, they will get something to criticize on court martial. Military courts are always there, but what these people who are lined up in court, think the discussion is, what did they do? Who are they?
But Honorable, you're just looking at Dr. and Haj.
Yes.
The NUP supporters that have been there before, they were there during the elections. A number of people have been presented before this court martial, meaning any civilian is susceptible to get there, even you and I. So
I don't agree with civilians being tried in military courts. However, let's be objective and discuss these civilians that have gone in military courts. Who are they? What have they been doing? I gave you the background of 1996, where your brother would turn a terrorist and kill you and even other people. Well trained, sophisticated, quietly trained. I remember some people went to certain country, and even their president came here and asked for forgiveness to come back. They call it what?
Amnesty?
Amnesty. I don't think it was even amnesty.
You're speaking in terms.
Yes. I don't want to mention countries, but I remember President came here. He could be remembering. He was in the ministry, maybe Francis.
Which president?
Al-Savanjan, something from, he was the president of, but there were young people who trained there. So the president asked for them, our president, to come back. They are the ones that had training, and they started killing people. And they started the terrorism here. And then the speaker of Sudan, Khartoum, Turabi, who had also sent young people and trained the different characters of people here, that became a problem. Now, these are people we assume they are civilians, but they turn more professional in military than what we think. So, whoever is in military court, we need to get facts. Who are they? When you say NUP supporters, what if they had specialized training? How do I know? They need to prove.
At the island?
No, when they arrest you on Kampala Road, you have been training in Russia. It doesn't mean that that because they have got you on Kampala Road, I'm innocent because I was on Kampala Road. You could be a well-trained person and dangerous to the society.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me bring in Fiona, Senior Counsel, as I was rightly corrected. Fiona, the question I put to you is, especially the jostling that was in the court-martial about territorial jurisdiction. Cases, Kenya, Sweden, Athens, Switzerland, does it hold any water? Is this any ace that the defense can use to especially open up this case for understanding, especially for a lemma? And your thoughts if this holds any water?
I want to thank the eminent speakers that spoke before me, because they've said a lot of what I agree with. The root really comes from the legislation that creates the court martial. The legislators that gave this power to the court martial, and also the lacuna that the Constitution is very silent as to whether the court martial would fall under the normal courts of judicature. So That's why my brother would call it quasi-judicial. And that creates, again, that raises many things, like he said, independence. If even the soldiers should be concerned about whether under such the court-martial they will actually get justice. An independent, competent court, competence, who is, I feel that one of the biggest losses in taking civilians to the court-martial is that the civilians are denied having access to competent, trained, experienced judges who might be impartial because of the thousands of cases they've dealt with. So they are denied that. But the right to a fair hearing is a fundamental right in our constitution. And when we look at the courts or the tribunals that are created to give justice, that should be the test. So even before we think about this territorial jurisdiction, we need to think about procedure. Before somebody can come before a court of law, the arrest, was it legal? Was it a proper arrest? Was he detained in a legal place of detention? Was he told his rights? Was he given the, what is it called, the Miranda rights? Was he, and then, yes, the extradition. Did it follow the procedure as has been raised? But I think that for such a high interest, high stakes case, we would be robbing the people of Uganda by just focusing on the semantics and technicalities that have happened, because this happens every day. I think we need to look at the bigger questions in this room, the bigger questions in this country. There is a challenge here, a challenge to a parliament that has consistently looked at this lacuna and failed to address themselves to it. A problem that has been looked at by the Constitutional Court. Even Uganda Law Society has a ruling that has been stayed by the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court has made many decisions about the court-martial. But then, you know, we have this TKO that happens every time something is not pleasing. They just stay, put in a notice of appeal, and that's it. So there is a very big, in the last 3 years, I want to applaud the Chief Justice that he has managed to lobby for, and the Minister of Justice, to lobby for increased funding and increased facilitation of the judiciary. We have more judges than we ever imagined that we could. We have a healthy budget now. I think that one of the greatest injustices that needs to be addressed is to see that fundamental cases that speak to the root of our constitutionalism, like the cases that have been stayed indefinitely, are dealt with expeditiously. Because in dealing with just that one case, you do not know how much justice you're giving to so many people. We're not talking about all the backlog, yes? Now, I think that at a time such as this, with a hotshot victim like Dr. Kiza Besigye, we need to see even the hotshot lawyer, Martha Karua, addressing the fundamental issues that are raised by what is happening in that court. Everybody talks about, you know, decorum versus etc., how the court should have risen above the behavior of Aaron Kiza, how Aaron Kiza should have conducted himself better. Again, this is also a threat to the legal profession. If we've lost, and we're talking today about politics and the law. And I want to speak to my former boss, my mentor, Dr. Babu, that with all due respect, I object to your statement.
Okay.
Lawyers are equipped to serve in every aspect of society, and we are supposed to.
So
I mean, the Pharisees and Sadducees were all lawyers.
They're
exactly.
trained also.
And you're a pilot and you're in politics.
To fly
You've
everywhere.
not said anything, yes. So I think that I
pilots
speak for
can be judges also.
I speak for my brethren and state that you would do well to have a lawyer heading your board, because we understand governance, we're trained in governance, while you'd have to train an engineer on how to run a board. So I don't think that we should throw out the baby with the bathwater. But the issues that we're seeing in the court-martial area around decorum, I remember I worked under Tumsime Kawega when we were representing some people in the court-martial years ago when I was a very young girl. And the, bless his soul, the late chairman then, Dr. Eli Tumuine, would say things, there's a lot of drama in that court-martial, but I will forever respect the advocates that were in that court-martial, the way they conducted themselves, forced the chairman to listen and to address the issues. And not to say that I am judging how Aaron conducted himself. We live in a different generation from that generation of 2005. We live in a generation where, as you've said, everybody plays to the gallery, but I need to understand why professionals are selling the birthright of their profession at the altars of anticipated political careers that may never be. I think today's situation is a challenge to all of us professionals, to all of us Ugandan leaders, to all of us whose parents have bled and done a lot to pay for our education, to bring us here so that we're better than them. Because I keep saying that it is okay for somebody that doesn't have power to use certain mechanisms to get heard, to shout, to scream, to throw themselves on the floor, because there's no other way their voice can be projected. Segirinya was right in behaving the way he did. At that time, he didn't have power. But when you have power, we need to see greatness, and greatness is power in control. Lawyers have instruments that they can use. And Honorable Mao stated something that, we saw a lot of drama around papers. Exactly. Law counsel at the reception, when you're applying for anything, when you're applying for a practicing certificate, the secretary will just, not the secretary, the younger people will look at them and say, this I is not dotted, please take it back. So there are certain things that have happened in this process because it is now a political process. Okay. So it would be very, Timothy, it would be very unfair to look at it with the surgical eyes of only the law or only politics. It's engaged. But I think that this gives us a challenge and an opportunity. Like 1995 gave a chance to Ugandans to come up with a constitution that spoke for them. I think it's high time we revisited a lot of the laws that are actually right now visiting so much injustice on us. And this thing is also a show that when we keep quiet, we do not know when it will be us. We've seen many laws that are passed illegally. We object. Those who object are looked at as ridiculous. But then the next day, the people that were promulgating the same laws are the victims. So this calls for collective responsibility. This calls for courage. It takes courage to face the masses on social media and say the right thing, because what is right is no longer popular in this country. And I think that we need people to speak truth, because the Muntu wa Wansi does not benefit from these dramatics. Okay. The Muntu wa Wansi who's going to be swept because he's been found with military wares. Exactly. Can you give me a translation? Maybe a Swahili translation. Please give it to me. An ordinary Ugandan. Sorry, I like the Muntu wa Wansi word. Watu porojo, yes? Okay. Yes, my people from Nebi should hear that one, yes. So the ordinary Ugandan is not served by the histrionics and the drama And the ordinary Ugandan to the legislature is served by you doing your work, showing up honorable, and making sure that that law is amended. The ordinary Ugandan is served by our honorable Supreme Court justices with the big salaries, showing up and making sure those cases are heard, because these cases are determining the destinies of our children and our children's children. So today, I'm very sad, but I feel judged. I feel judged by the failings of a system in which I have participated.
I was saying all lawyers.
Exactly.
Not all.
Thank you.
No.
Let me read some feedback that has come through.
He said lawyers. This is
No.
specific
Let me read feedback and then we'll come back to that. This is teacher Asimo Julius, a senior citizen in Bara, says it's legal because I wish it. King Louis the 17th of France, Uganda's laws are in the hands of the heads of state and the army. Okay? He continues to say, Pastor Raymond here, Ngora, says, thank you for the show. I thank Honorable Babu and I like his point. Some of the teachers are loyal. Let's let the people select the things they say. Okay? Good evening, UBC. I would like to know from Captain Babu, was Dr. Besigye brought in by the Kenyan Army? I think this is very cynical, but we'll leave it at that. Good evening. Thank you for the show. I believe that the delay of the Supreme Court to decide the Kabazuguruka case is political. For as long as the president and the civilians have been tried in the court-martial, then we can all be forgiven and forget about the Supreme Court's decision. Okay? Thank you, Timothy, for the show. The gymnastics of politics and the law is different. The kingdoms and the democratic republics and states. The viewers need to make a final verdict on how to identify our beloved country. This is Mulindwa Rugumayo from Fort Porto. And finally, one that comes in, Justice, Justice is a song that has been sung several times, but the Honorable Norbert Mao and Council Nicholas Opio know that Martin Luther King once said, true peace is merely the absence of tension, but justice must prevail. Therefore, justice for all, Besigye and Dr. and Haj Kamlegia, inclusive of everything. Thank you for the show. This is the ZAT from Gulu West Division. Okay. That's very specific. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back from this break, we'll be wrapping up this topic and more.
Here's your chance to win school fees for your child for a whole year. Just pay school fees using Momo. Dial *165 *80 hash. Select option 2 for school pay. Select option 1 to pay school fees. Enter the student number and amount and approve the transaction. You will now enter the draw to win school fees.
The parish development model launched in 2022 by President Yoweri Museveni to fight poverty and enhance service delivery at the parish level has disbursed over 1 trillion Uganda shillings to more than 10,500 circles, benefiting over 1 million individuals countrywide. The government of Uganda appreciates you for embracing PDM and using it to move away from Okorera Ekida Kyonka. You are encouraged to continue participating in this journey towards socio-economic transformation.
Parish development model meno misegese madongo mulukin ma Uganda ma President Yoweri Museveni owuodho i oro gana ariyo gi piero gariyo gatonga malwenyo gi chandi kod imedo iko ngeri matich pa government tundori dhano ma piny chako gi muluka otieko dhiro pesa silingi trillion achiel thoni abora beach risakos makalo gana par gi mia beach to ji milion achiel gana piero adek gariyo gi mia achiel gi piero aboro gadek to ka Uganda gi pi jinwang'o pesa madongruok gine. Government ma Uganda foyo wini rojolo chan ma parish development model to wi oro makwanyruok woko inyaka tichiri ich kende mung'ere tek ni okokolera e chidanchonka. Onyo igo kukuri jopiny medo riwruok i wuoth me makelo wirruok maber ithenge mating'o malo lim kod ikuopa ji. Wach me okelere rin kod Government Citizen Interaction Center, State House.
Enteekateeka ya Parish Development Model eyatongozebwa mu 2022 ng'omukulembeze w'eggwanga Yoweri Kaguta Museveni yagitongoza. Eno eyambyeko nnyo okuggya abantu mu bwavu n'okutumbula enkulaakulana y'ebitundu ebyenjawulo okusinziira ku mutendera gw'emiruka. Era ng'enteekateeka eno yakateekebwamu ensimbi za Uganda eziri mu trillion emu n'ensimbi endala ezigwamu. Era nga Sako omutwalo gumu 5 ze zaakaganyulwa mu nteekateeka eno nga bagijjumbidde bawerera ddala akakadde kamu mu emitwalo 3 mu 2013 okwetoloola ebitundu by'eggwanga ebyenjawulo. Gavumenti ku lw'ensonga eno yeebaza abantu bonna abataddeyo omwoyo ne muteekesa mu nkola enteekateeka ya Parish Development Model era ng'eyambyeko okuyitimusa abantu okuva ku nkola ey'okukolerera olubuto lwokka. Kati bannayuganda mwenna mukubirizibwa okwenyigira mu nteekateeka eno n'enteekateeka zonna endala eziba zireeteddwa gavumenti okukulaakulanya abantu baayo. Mwebale nnyo, mwebalire ddala.
Enengaharengehe ya Parish Development Model PDM yasimamisibwawo mu mwiko kw'ebikano 2022 ni President Museveni husolanisa mu butambi ni hulosera hutapusa bibindu bikali mu miruha yayengisibwamo kamapesa silingi trillion sikano sitwera kama 55 kakaabirisibwa mu matuli sako kumukanda mutwera ni bitondo birano katapusibwa ku bandu babola ifuma ndwera kimikanda kitaru bikano bibiri sitondo sitwera kama 55 papataru mwinambo. Gavumenti ya Uganda ekhusima khulwe khukhwakanira PDM ni khukiyetsa khura khusye khurambira inda yonyene. Babandu balombebwa khukhuyambira mu nekaharengeha bubahobo okhutapusibwakho ni ba Government Citizen Interaction Center State House.
Parish Development Model lobu President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni itegeo karula 2022 anwaiti jiba korokali eto moronya nesi kwa nako raisi rigin trillion edope neja sisa koilwe de parete ilukumini tomon keda kwa takani. Ana kidona itungalwe de parete million edope imeda uneto tomo Parish Development Model anatari Uganda kere. Isiala mikitapu gano Uganda yasi kere anwaija onkacham ne Parish Development Model osodote daito soma nesi anwamu atara no kalia kaijal aswam anwa ko ikiboni isinyiko kitieze president ayata kita igange Parish Development Model tetera kere ntuna kwa puok ejokunare esiriate na yanga utijo eriong telo Government Citizen Interaction Center State House.
Enteekateeka ya Parish Development Model eyatandikirweho omwebembezi w'ihanga Yoweri Kaguta Museveni omwaka ogw'2022 okulwanisa obworo n'okutunguura obuheereza obwerikukorera aha rurengo rw'omuruka obwa hati yahiire sente ezirikurenga omu bihumbi 10 obwo nezigabira SACCOs zirikuhingura omu mutwaro gumwe. Eki kigasiire abantu miliyoni 1 omu ihanga lyona. Gavumenti ya Uganda nebasima mwena ahabw'okwejumbira omu nkoreegi eya PDM n'okugikoresa omu kwetungura mukaruga omu kukorera okulya kwonka kandi nimuhigwa kugumizamu omu rugyendo oru orw'entunguka. Obutumwa obu nibubareeterwa ekitongore kya Government Citizen Interaction Center State House.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines as we get to the last leg of the show. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Let me read a bit of your feedback so that we can jump into the conclusion of this debate today. Timothy, does Honorable Renaitwe understand what the topic is about? I think he's misplaced. He's talking about objectivities, but I find him so subjective. He's only seeking to be politically correct at addressing issues at hand. This is Peter from Uganda. Okay. Good evening, Timothy. The Honorable Renaitwe, if the case is being in the court-martial, is it competent enough to handle it? Can't the mainstream courts handle it? Secondly, he asserts that lawyers are posturing in court and acting unprofessional. Would I be wrong if I said they are intimidated or they are intimating the members of parliament? This is Benjamin from Kampala. Okay? Yes. imitating the members of parliament.
lost their profession.
Dr. Kizza Besigye has military knowledge because I understand he was part of the NRA. So what makes him a civilian? This is Ronald, because he retired from the army. Thank you, Timothy, for the program. This is Akila from Kanungu. I think the court should be independent, despite the political differences. What was done to Aaron Kizza was not right, because one should be sentenced after judgment. But he was not given a chance to be, I think you mean a hearing, and he was not given a chance to be heard, okay? Finally, Timothy, my major question to Captain Babu is, why did government choose Mpuga when the leader of opposition in parliament was there? Which position does Mpuga hold that warranted him to represent? Why didn't the government bypass Noop, which was at the late official burial, and opted for Mpuga? First, you brought up the false trumped-up charges against the innocent man. Secondly, you poisoned and denied him bail for further medical attention. Now you hear blaming NUP anyway, and opposition organizing a collapsed state funeral through parliament. This history has been written, and now we know at least what it is. There's need for balance. Mpuga, I'll leave the last one that you have said there. But I think there's a lot of allegations made here. So Honorable Mpuga is a commissioner in parliament. That is need for clarity. And also, this was not bypassed. There's clarity on how burials happen at a state funeral, and it is the prerogative of parliament on how they go about it, not Noop. So let's leave that one for another day. Fiona, let me come to you. Something you whispered to me here, which I will not mention, but how do you see this play out? Okay, I'll try to mention it like Honorable Naito said when you were speaking in parables, showing your cards. So you mentioned a case that you were handling with someone and showing cards. When you look at this case, one, a new charge has been thrown out there, a new accused has been brought out there. The defense has gone on to asking to go to the Constitutional Court, which was ruled against. They have the jumping onto territorial jurisdiction. How do you see this play out, especially even as the political season starts?
I think it was Justice Mubiru in one of those appeals where he said that to determine whether there is independence and fairness in a process, it should be so obvious that an ordinary man would be able to tell. So I think to everybody, the lines have been crossed, drawn. I think it's very clear where things are going. Both parties, by the way, because everybody is very, very clear on their stand. That's why I'm saying right now the issue should not be for who is in that court martial dealing with this issue today. The issue should be with everybody that can do something long-term about it. We are here because we've been very reactionary. We just jump for every new scandal, every new drama. And yet there are things we could do that would fundamentally cure the ills in the maybe the UPDF Act, in the trial of because both parties, both sides have a point. Honorable has a point when it comes to terrorism and people that have certain things. We also have, I think I've seen in American jurisdictions and other jurisdictions, the issue of retired soldiers and whether the court-martial still has jurisdiction over them. Are they considered civilians and things like that? Because some of them even retire with security and wares. What are they called? Stores. Then there's the issue also of procedure. I think that's why we're seeing added charges and maybe added accused again to repair, right? So what is clear is that drama is going to continue. What is clear is that, unfortunately, I do not think that the accused in this case are going to really have a fair day in court, but neither do I think that the court is going to have an easy time of it either. I think there'll be, should I say, what are they called? Victims on both sides, because history is going to judge both sides. The people that are right now in court are supposed to be running for elections, so I don't know what that is going to do to their campaigns. The court martial also represents certain people who might want to use to repair their reputations, which are being severely damaged by what's happening in the court martial. So both sides are going to be injured, but the grass, we need to interest ourselves in the grass, and that's you and I, Timothy. If tomorrow they find you with a military watch that can spit acid or something, are you going to end up in the court martial? Probably. What should we do about it? We have a parliamentarian here, we have lawyers, we have an honorable minister of justice. We need change. And is it too late? No, it is not. Is it too late for some people? Yes, it is. We also need to address certain things that are affecting what we have today. We need to address the issue of if the court martial states that it's a court of competent jurisdiction and it's actually part of the courts of judicature, then it should also be open to being under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. If there's a lacuna there, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. Yeah. But also at the same time, we want to see the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, show courage in dealing with issues that are affecting civilians in the court martial when they are brought before them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Honorable, you as Parliament are being put in the spotlight, and I know you have moved private members' bills when you are a legislator. The UPDF Act is on the spotlight right now, especially sections of it that are being questioned on how broad or vague they are there. But also towards the end of last year, there were suggestions that the Honorable Minister, Jacob Oboth, would be presenting amendments to this. Are you going to do something about the queries that are here? Because this could diffuse what could happen in 2026.
Well, that is a good suggestion. Any law is subject to amendment. So if it is found that it's necessary, and rightly, like how Honorable Minister of Defense Oboth intends to bring in amendments and other proposals that can really improve the Act, they are welcome. As Parliament, we are always waiting for legislations that will be coming, especially from executive. We legislate on the executive bills, and we will be ready to do that. However, when it comes to that act of UPDF Act, it may not be easy for a private member's bill to come, maybe from the UPDF officers. As members of Parliament, yes, we can bring the amendment where it is necessary, really. We can bring this and debate about it. However, as I told you, this is not in parables. I said society keeps on changing, and when it changes, you address those challenges accordingly. When civilians turns to be military, in civilian color, and they become military, or people who possesses military equipment and use them, then that becomes a challenge.
So how does one come from a civilian to a military officer? Are you trying to say that if I have a pistol with me, then that makes me...
If you have a pistol illegally, you can't have a pistol when you don't know how to use it. if you have military weapons with no permission by clear state institutions that should be allowing you to have it, then you are not civilian, you are not a military officer. So there.
The wording used,
yes.
regulation of the UPDF Act,
yeah.
is to say you're found in possession
with military
military stores or stores that are ordinarily the preserve
of the
armed forces.
Yes.
The question is a pistol a preserve of the military force? Is an AK-47 a preserve of the military force? Of course, the answer is no, because I can get a license under the Firearms Act to own and use a pistol. I can get a license to own an AK-47.
And if you don't have license?
Oh no, you can have an AK-47.
Without a license?
License under the Firearms Act. So therefore, having a pistol in and of itself doesn't necessarily bring you within the ambit of the military code, if you read that rule strictly.
So do you see a challenge or a vagueness in some of the sections of the UPDF Act, and what are you going to do about it as a legislator?
Possibly we can improve the law as legislators if it brings in conflict. However, today, if the military says, oh, we have got you with our things, you have no license, how do we defend you?
So what are you going to improve that is there? What do you suggest to improve on this law, especially with the lacuna we're seeing that has brought us this far?
There's in fact a bill actually that's been gazetted by the Minister of Defense called the Uganda People's Defense Forces Amendment Bill of 2024. It was gazetted in the Uganda Gazette on the 21st of June 2024. The challenge with it's a 68-page bill, is that what they are seeking to do through the amendment is not to answer the questions we are raising, rather to try and regularize certain illegalities that have been taking place within the UPDF. For instance, the Special Forces Command does not exist in the structure of the army. And yet we've had a commander, an institution, spent money on it. What they are trying to do under this bill is now to make that regular. What the MP might want to do is to look at this bill, I'm happy to share it with him, and to say the issues we are raising here must find their ways in this bill as a long-term solution to the inadequacies or defects we are seeing in the law.
But also one way of discouraging people possessing weapons without legal processes, actually it may be strengthened, to may be now legally put in the bill, because it will be debated. Any bill is processed through debate from the committee to the House, and therefore members, majority, preferring to discourage people who are not licensed to have this weapon, they may say actually they should appear in court martial, or they may be termed as military officers.
Honorable, let me get to Nick. To get a pistol is between 10 and 15 million. To get a license is less than 500,000.
Yeah.
So how are you going to determine what you're talking about? Because if I have the means, I can get it. But also, it puts me at arm's length, especially with the UPDF Act. Because is it now a preserve of the army, or am I licensed Uganda?
I mean, I don't see what you are trying really to argue here. It is very simple. If you don't have capacity to purchase this gun and follow procedures, rules, and laws of this country, and procure this pistol under the legal framework, then why do you have to own it without a permission?
Okay.
Then there, you are, I don't know how I should term you. you become dangerous to the society and to the laws of the country.
Before a law is made or amended, there must be a nuisance.
Yeah, correct.
A nuisance is the one which determines when you're making a new law or if you're amending a law. Now, my brother here has talked about gaps, and Madame has talked about certain things that can be done. Now, you look at that, what sort of nuisance does it create? Then you get experts to look at it and amend the law accordingly.
Yeah.
Now, he has made a very good point that they have already come up with amendments which are going to be made, but Parliament has the powers, when they bring these amendments, to look at the nuisance there is within the UPDF Act and look at that nuisance, whether it is viable or not, whether there is a gap. I want to make it very clear, very, very clear, that there are weaknesses in all our laws, by the way. And that's why they have a special, I think they've got a reform group that looks at the law all the time.
Law from Commission.
Yes. So, as far as I'm concerned, yes, there are weaknesses. And in fact, I was saying it earlier on. What are the weaknesses of a military court?
Yeah.
How can we help a military court to become more, a little bit more viable? A point I wanted to make here, the majority of lawyers have got etiquettes. When they go to their courts, you can't believe it. They behave way, way above board. Even when they have these debates across and they are talking, you can see that they are very well trained. There are a few, unfortunately, who have got a little bit of a problem. Those ones, we know who they are.
There are weaknesses in our society.
There are weaknesses in every society. You have them.
Yeah.
So, as far as I'm concerned, yes. And by the way, the reason I do not talk about, in fact, me, I'm still saying this. You lawyers, before you go on hitting each other in that court, can you please get my brother, Kano Besije, to come home? He's about my age. He needs medical treatment. Instead of wasting time keeping him there, let him get a bond. Let him go home and come to court as many times as you people want him to come.
Captain Francis.
No, I'm sorry. This
speaking to General Freeman. We don't have the power.
No, but the lawyers, instead of arguing on these other nuisance which are there.
The court can, on his own motion. The Honorable Batamao here was arrested.
Okay.
He refused to apply for bail. The court gave him bail.
Luckily, they are watching us. I'm appealing.
Let me bring in.
So let me finish this one.
Yes.
It's very, very important. And I wanted these lawyers who are here to know. The lawyers have got the ability to work in that court and make it viable.
And just to let you know, Captain Francis Babu, it is Dr. Besije that has refused to get bond and bail. Let me bring in Nicholas.
Maybe he hasn't talked to me yet. Maybe I should talk to him.
Go visit. Go visit.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. I don't know whether it is true.
Allow me bring in Nicholas.
But the reason I'm not talking about Dr. Besije and
Haj Kamrege,
because I think we should leave that until it is solved, instead of me putting in my views. Basically, I still feel we are not doing justice. First of all, to the people who have been taken there. Secondly, to make the military court a better court. And number two, some of our very good lawyers have kept quiet. They have not come out to find the gaps you're talking about. They have not come out to find solutions to the problems we're having. What they are doing, some people are playing to the gallery. And these people are playing to the gallery. For example, the 9 months is too much for that young man, as far as I'm concerned. And I would appeal that somebody somewhere reviews.
Who was given 3 years by the Supreme Court.
Yes, I know that. And some of them have been even given fines of
$1,000.
$1,000 and so on. So, no, I'm not going to go there, because really all we want to do, can we find a solution to the problem of this court? Can we find a solution? We are very educated, we have very highly educated lawyers with PhDs, with professors. Can we find a solution that is going, can we find, you said there's a very, very nice writes-up which have been made, how they can even improve that court. To me, that's where I want to hear somebody talking. I am tired of drama.
Okay. Nick, coming to you, You have seen the gymnastics here, the theatrics of this theater that has been there. How do we de-escalate this, especially the UPDF Act in question, looking at the military court in question? How do we de-escalate this, especially for posterity?
Timothy, there are 3,000 young people who are picked up from all over Karamoja who are being detained at the 3rd Division headquarters in Mbale, waiting to appear before a general court-martial on allegations that they were suspected to be rustlers. Just look at how absurd it is. Yeah. There are human lives we're talking about involved. I have made a personal decision not to return to the general court-martial because my experience in that court, in spite of my civility, has been, in my own experience, haunting me. I have had many cases before that court, luckily gotten many people out from that court. I'll give you just one case of Dan Olaodia, a UPC diehard from my own district of Gulu, granted bail by the High Court. In fact, cases withdrawn against him before the Chief Magistrate in court in Gulu. He was yanked from the floor of the courthouse by armed men and taken before the General Court-Martial. Dan Olaodia is a brother-in-law to one of the generals in this town. It took a High Court judge to give me an order to get him released, but not after he had spent months in detention because of that General Court-Martial. So there are human lives being impacted. I think first and foremost, the authorities and the powers that be must take a pause and re-examine that court. First, because that court is even most unfair to soldiers. I've done many cases before that court. The reports that we wrote for the UN Human Rights Office and the Uganda Human Rights Commission detailed grave injustice against serving military officers. Many of them spent 10 years before that court not knowing what their fate is, in pre-trial detention, and come and plead guilty because they would rather know a sentence they are serving than to stay there in limbo. Our own General Tumukunde spent 11 years before that court.
Yes.
Waiting to be tried.
Amon spent 14.
14 years. In fact, Amon's case was even, sad, just like the case of Captain Ogwang, who went before that court, got convicted by that court. He appealed to the Court-Martial Appeals Court. The Court-Martial Appeals Court confirmed his sentence. He then challenged the trial before the High Court. The High Court quashed the decision of the military court system. An appeal was preferred to the Court of Appeal that held in his favor. Then he went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, we don't have powers to try cases from the military. 14 years is being tossed around in that court system. We need to provide clarity now because there are lives involved. So first steps first, pause the trial of civilians in the military court, await the decision of the Supreme Court. Secondly, there is an opportunity in Parliament to amend the UPDF Act, focus on military justice as a very important component of that amendment. Right now, my casual reading of that 68-page document has nothing to do with ensuring justice in the military court system. There are many areas of reform requiring trained lawyers to be presiding over that court, requiring that the people who sit on that tribunal must have security of tenure and are not beholden to some power outside of that court, requiring that access to lawyers in that court must be made easy. I mean, the other day, lawyers had to walk 2 kilometers to get to the courthouse. And
we need the exorcism.
Yes.
Out of that court.
The demon out of that court must be exercised. So as a long-term solution.
we need a very good man who can do exorcism.
Now. And I think we have the right person in the Minister of Justice.
Yeah.
Alongside his brother, Honorable Both. These are all fantastic lawyers, both of whom have trained me at my younger years. Both when he was working for the Aegis Chambers in Mbale in 2005. And the Honorable Mao here, when I was still a child up to now, he's been my mentor and brother. And so they have the power, and the moment is now for them to seize the moment and amend the law to ensure that law is fair to UPDF serving officers, but also to people who appear before that court. We must also examine the use of secondary legislation. A lot of the problem we have with the General Court Martial really is because of the minister's power, the regulations that the minister has made under that act. We've got to narrow that to something very specific, administrative and procedural. Now you have secondary legislation in regulations creating offenses. The minister has no power to create offenses, and yet UPDF regulations create offenses, create things that undermine the independence of the court. Regulation 65 requires that the court can take, that's why the court takes so many breaks, adjournments. In one day they can take 6, 7, 8 adjournments because they have to go and consult the appointing authority. So really this is the moment to look at the General Court Martial, and perhaps, you know, when we embarked on what we call the defense professionalization, they wrote a defense white paper, and anybody who cares about this, should look at that defense white paper. It's a fantastic document. But the things that follow thereafter really don't speak to the spirit of that defense reform process that was concluded in 2004. And if you look back at those documents, the fundamentals are still very good. We just have to make sure the laws that were enacted follow those fundamentals. The last thing is this. When elections come around, there seems to be a spike in the trials of civilians of a particular nature before that court. In the last election, it was NUP supporters, many of whom were picked up in Kalangala on a campaign trail. Over 40 of them accused of keeping 2 bullets in some dustbin in some house in Makere, Shivuli. And you saw what happened to them. Yeah. People like Olivia Lutaya, who spent years in that court. And they had to negotiate their exit through Minister Balam. Again, we must stop politicizing that court and using it as an instrument of dealing with political opponents, because it undermines the court. It undermines the rule of law. It undermines what should be an ordinary justice process. And I think that the General Court Martial has far too many times lent itself to political processes that we could have otherwise dealt with elsewhere. Because it's not by surprise that many of the regime's opponents have found themselves before that court-martial, especially in the run-up to elections.
Interesting that you talked about Captain Ola being there for 2 years, but also mentioning that amendment coming. Captain Francis Babu, before I get to the minister, how would you advise government, especially with this case, the sensitivity, but also the ramifications that could come from it?
I think one of the things that we should do, government should listen. But we need, in fact, I wish we had more Fionas to talk to the government. Government needs to be told what is wrong, but given in a certain way. And what I have realized in recent times, people do not engage government in an orderly manner. And there is a belief that government doesn't hear, and therefore we must behave in a certain way. What I think government should do, and very seriously too, in this particular case, they must get away from where they are now, and there must be a very big mind change, set, because there are certain people in the system who have got a mindset. And that mindset must change because the world is changing. Now, like I said earlier on, there are certain things that which have become a nuisance. We must now think on how to get rid of that gap, the gap everybody is talking about. How do we get rid of it? How do we get some experts, people who we can listen to? I've been getting an impression that they don't even listen to our people anymore. There are people who are not willing to listen to expert opinion. My friend here was talking about the spirit. The spirit has been eaten by certain demons. Now, it is those demons that we must get out. Let me tell you, everything that is being said, not taking military, civilian people to the court, we're not talking about the ones Kajara is talking about. We're talking about people who don't even have a gun. I've been told there are people who have been taken to that court who have never been even in any form of anti-government. I've been told. Now, those ones who are pseudo-military, the resistance and whatnot, that's a different, we can argue about that one. But we're talking about those who are totally innocent. For example, up to now, and I'm sorry to say this, people are not convinced that Besigye had made some mistake. People are not convinced. And like Council here talked about coming up with new things every day. The reason government has to come out and become very clear. If we have got a department, a section of the court of Uganda, where these cases can be taken of armed people and so on and so forth, let's use that one. And we have a win-win situation. And let's improve our military court. If our military court requires certain things to be done to make it become like a court, let's do it. For example, the tenure he's talking about, the personnel in there being legal experts, legal trained people, and so on and so forth. In fact, I wouldn't mind if we go, there's a lot of military officers who are lawyers, trained in Makerere. Can they join this court and eventually improve it so that it is under, as she said, under the Supreme Court of Uganda, eventually. So I think we need to calm down. Everybody is in high spirit. In fact, we have stopped talking to each other. We are all coming out with gloves in the blue corner and the red corner. We are not having people who are having a conversation that can help us to improve the situation. I think we can improve the situation. For example, the other time, they're saying the senior counsel from Kenya had not got her papers, and people made all sorts of statements. Eventually, they gave her the paper after saying there were certain things had to be improved. Like the honorable minister said, that one you didn't even need the chairperson.
You needed the receptionist.
Who's a justice. All you needed was a secretary to look at it and say, well, these things are not well done, and so on and so forth. Now, these are simple things that we can all sit down and improve. Ugandans can do it. And I'm appealing, by the way, all of you, I don't know where you're going around, we are appealing to His Excellency the President. He is the one who can improve this. Through him. And get the military court and find a solution to all these simple things which everybody is raising, and we find a situation. And before I end, I want to appeal that the 9 months they have given this man be reduced.
Okay.
That will be my end.
Honorable Minister, this case has been on since the 26th, will spread through February. We don't know the long haul of how it will go. What opportunities does it present to you as the one holding the docket for justice and constitution affairs there, that you can be able to put at play and calm the temperatures? You are both right now the one they are mentioning as the one who is going to cast out the demon, but also you're the one who said you're
exorcist.
Yes. You also talked about the vent. This is
from Rubaga.
This is the opportunity for your vent to put out some pressure.
Timothy, the party I lead does not believe in a lot of laws and regulations. Actually, those who want to oppress people make very many laws. The truth is, when you have the correct culture in a society, people will always regulate themselves. During the break, I said the military court is called court martial, but they behave like a martial court. They should not forget that it was intentional that the word court comes first. A court is an environment which must make you believe that you are getting a fair trial. Whether it is a military court, whether it is an ecclesiastical court, whether it is a Sharia court or for the Muslims, it must make you feel at ease. After all, they have the power to make a binding decision which will be enforced. So there's no road, there's no need for people who actually have power to show power. So this is a court martial, not a martial court. They are too martial in the way they behave. They are too militaristic. And the problem is that eventually lawyers will start boycotting that court. They will definitely feel like the court is more concerned about putting you in your place rather than getting on with the business of a trial. After all, what is a trial? Those who have brought you before the court present their evidence. And the court should be above that. Now, concerning the antics and drama of those who go and throw tantrums in court, it is not just lawyers, even some accused person. There was a one every night who wanted to strangle a judge. So you have that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the images that come to our screens and on social media really give a very bad signal. But let us also not have illusions about what the law is. The law really is a collection of edicts and rules and regulations, norms that are imposed by those who have authority and power. Right now, the American Parliament, call it the Congress, has said anybody who assists the International Criminal Court in investigating, arresting, or even trying an American citizen before that court will face harsh sanctions. Right now, since our financial system depends on American systems, visa and so on, the judges of the International Criminal Court may not have access to their bank accounts. They may go to eat in a restaurant and their cards will be declined. So, I am old enough not to be deluded that there is anything that you say this is so ideal and so on and so forth. It is really a game of power. But no, I'm not saying you should lose hope.
Yes.
I'm saying you must deal with the reality, because the law clashes with the reality. And this is not to justify abuses, but you know that when there was a civil war, even in that America, which we quote so often, the president suspended habeas corpus. So, Karamoja, President Museveni has defended his action by saying, what do you do when armed hoodlums, call them cattle rustlers, reigns supreme? And basically the police and the military are basically the ones in prison, because these armed gangs are all over. Look at El Salvador. Gangs had taken over the country. This new president had to take of course he went beyond the line. Anybody with a tattoo was arrested. It was a crime to have a tattoo. Issued shoot to kill orders. It is good, it is easy to sit in a panel like this and pontificate. It is another matter to be in charge of a country.
It happened in Philippines also.
Haiti right now is a gangster's paradise. In fact, these Fangon should be given air tickets to go to Haiti. So that they can.
The ticket, honorable.
No, I think it is where they will find happiness. I see them boxing metals and so on, threatening this and that. They can raid a hospital and kick guards and so on. Now, you have a country to run. So, that is the one side. But whatever happens, in principle, the purpose of a court martial is to discipline members of the armed forces. I heard General Nalweso saying that Colonel Besigye is not a civilian, that he belongs to the reserve force, and their commander is the Lieutenant General Charles Otema. So, technically, according to her, he is being tried at the proper address. that is what they are talking about. Now, my final take is really that we need this trial to proceed. These antics, the delaying things, the drama are totally unnecessary. Now, I do not know whether when the court takes a break, they go to consult the president. I am going to ask him. Yeah, I need to ask him that an allegation has been made in public that the court martial takes a break to ask your opinion.
It's a regulation.
I think if the court martial wanted to ask the president's opinion, I think they would first go on with the trial and then discuss if they really want to involve him. But those are not normal procedures of any court. Just like if a high court judge is trying a case, I don't think they'll keep calling the Chief Justice. How should they decide? It is totally unacceptable. It is like if you, Timothy, during the break, you call the managing director of UBC. How is it going? What question should I ask? I would never return to such a talk show because I know you are just another jukebox.
Never know what he said.
Well, the earpieces normally are supposed to guide you in terms of managing time,
yes,
restraining certain characters, and so on. But we have a problem of a political culture. If the law society itself start acting on a law without even proposing an amendment, if the law society wakes up and says, the presence of the Attorney General and the Law Council undermines our independence, so we hereby evict him, but the law still remains, you lose your moral authority. It is okay to say you want to cut down the law, but don't forget the argument between Thomas More and Mr. Roper in A Man for All Seasons. Mr. Roper said, if I'm pursuing the devil, I'll cut through all the laws in England until I get to the devil. And Thomas More said, and if the devil turns around and starts chasing you, now there are no laws to protect you. So the court martial, those people, gentlemen of the court martial, should know that they are also potential candidates. Yes, everybody can be a potential candidate. These are the two things I want to promise our viewers. Number one, next month we are holding final consultations on the National Action Plan for Human Rights. We are going to involve everybody, the law society and so on. We need to have an action plan. Personal liberty is paramount. As a matter of fact, my own view is that the courts of law should prioritize matters of personal liberty. If there's a bail application, it should be heard the first thing in the morning before you start these other cases of other quarrels and so on. Secondly, the courts have no excuse. We have increased the numbers. Parliament has helped us. It has a huge budget. Their office facilities are the most comfortable of any group. Restaurants, saunas, jacuzzi, steam bath, name it. It's there. Even the courtrooms are so majestic. The court martial actually doesn't look like a court. When you go there, yes, they also need, you know, when you arrive for trial, first of all, you must be awed by what you see. Do you see cathedrals? When you enter a cathedral, whether you believe in God or not, you talk in quieter tones, even if you're an atheist. So the General Court Martial should improve its image, the way they behave. Secondly, they must really be professional.
Okay.
We pride ourselves in wanting to build a professional army. Now, a professional army, if you come to the gate, you should introduce yourself. Secondly, for the duration of the trial, you should get a card which clears you. The way when I go to a meeting of the UN, if I'm there for a week representing the Uganda government, I have an ID, which the people at the gate, I show it to them. So why don't they do those little things so that they stop arguing? And you know, the low-ranking soldiers at the gate are extremely rude. One time they beat up Honorable Geala Tigo, Honorable Regan Okumu, because they walk through the quarter guard in their shoes. I understand. I understand either you're supposed to stop. They have their regulation, which civilians don't understand. Then they started arguing with them. I also once had an argument somewhere on the Gulu Highway, but I had to run very quickly to a higher ranking officer. So Aaron Kiza should know that you are safer arguing with a real general. You know, you're arguing with a court orderly. That is common sense for your own safety. You must also do that. The second thing I'm going to do, I have requested the president that I want to speak to the National Security Council. The National Security Council is the body which discusses the overall thing in a bigger context. Because if there's something maybe I'm not understanding as Minister of Justice, I think I need to be told. So he has okayed it generally. So I hope to go there and tell them what we look like in the public eye and so on. After all, the highest rank according to our constitution is that of citizen. You see, the fact that do people understand what it means to be a citizen? You see, as opposed to subjects, because subjects don't have rights. Citizens have rights. Of course, they have responsibilities. So Ugandans need a new reorientation. The other day, my son was telling me they were having a prayer. Then their pastor said, "Pray for your LC1." None of them knew the name of the LC1 chairman. Okay, pray for your LC2. None of them knew. Pray for your councillor. The citizens are totally disconnected from the people who are closest to them, because the people who are closest to them are not the ATMs. It is better for them to know the MPs like Honorable Wakajara, because you call him, I have a sick patient. But otherwise, the best thing would have been to walk to the... No, that is how the voters treat the politician.
Lastly, Honorable Minister.
I am not a big fan of laws. The biggest problem in Uganda is not actually laws. Okay. It is to change the culture. So when I get the opportunity, I'll give feedback. Meanwhile, I urge all those who are interested in human rights to participate in the discussion on the National Action Plan for Human Rights. Remember, even President Biden was blasting us that Uganda doesn't have a National Action Plan for Human Rights.
Okay.
We now have a final draft. We are going to discuss it in a consultative manner with the public, take it to cabinet, then it will be rolled out. But citizens must continue insisting that what is in the Constitution is non-negotiable.
Thank you. Lastly, since you're the only lady here, you have the last word.
Thank you very much. I want to, first of all, just add something to what Honorable said, the issue of culture. What we've seen in the court martial, we've seen since 2000, since it was set up in 2005, it has not changed. It has gotten worse. So that culture is being intentionally promulgated, and it needs to be addressed. And I don't think the powers that be will address it unless they know what is at stake. And what is at stake is the credibility of that court. The credibility of any tribunal is the basis upon which it operates. And right now, I do not know whether it even has credibility with its own members of the UPDF forces. Forcefully conscripting civilians to be under it and not raising the standards of the justice that is meted out in that court is going to remain a travesty. As you speak to the National Security Council, it is very, very dangerous for citizens to lose hope in the streamlined, structured areas and ways that they get justice. Okay. They will start to take matters into their own hand if they feel that they're pushed against a wall. So we need to see that the court-martial serves its purpose, which is to deal with resolving disputes and dealing with criminals, and as opposed to becoming an instrument of oppression.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me read some feedback that has come through. There is only poetic justice in this country, but not a free and fair trial. Ugandan gunmen are not sure of how to forge ahead after 40 years of a pathetic political bankruptcy. They are simply trying to do whatever they are doing for publicity stunts and for appointing authorities as the appointing authority goes ahead with the 2026 elections. Additional charges, cooking up of suspects, baseless facts. This is a pure shame for Uganda. This is Dan Masiko Malcolm from FDC Ushenyi, okay? Severino from Arua says, Captain Babu should be allowed to rule this country for 8 months and change things. Captain Babu, you have heard. My cousin Juliana was shot and killed.
You don't want the opportunity to oppress us also?
My cousin Juliana was shot and killed by an NRM soldier in 1986 when she declined his advances. Witnesses include civilians and soldiers. The soldier was well represented in an advocate's court and got manslaughter in a civilian court. Why was this soldier not taken to the military court? The legal minds could comment and educate me on this. I feel there is no fair justice that was met with this. This is Charles Oduku who says that. Lastly, we all know Besigye is innocent. The issue of him having a gun is an excuse because it makes no sense. Him being charged in Uganda for having a gun in Kenya, unless the Uganda military service covers the whole of East Africa. I see a lot of messages. Thank you for all the messages that have come through. Unfortunately, we cannot be able to cover all of them for now.
Quickly dispose of the appeal because the slowness of response from the courts is hurting the reputation of the entire justice sector. It looks like the more judges and magistrates we recruit, the slower the process. Almost like millipedes. Many legs, but very slow.
Our time is fast. You know, our minister said something about Haiti.
Yes.
I wanted to tell him there used to be a man called Papa Doc and his son Baby Doc. The ghosts have come back.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through. Fiona, thank you very much for coming through. The production team behind making sure today happens, thank you so much for coming through and making sure everything happens as it should. We'll end with this quote, a Chinese quote that says, "The man who removes a mountain begins by carrying away small stones." Good morning.